Dario is getting his EX job this morning, and I'm wondering just how good he is, right? When he was released in War of the Visions, he was one of the best MR units. Because of his innate defense and spirit, he could be much tankier than a lot of other tanks, even at UR level. But now, the game has evolved quite a bit since then, and there are a lot of units with defense penetration and spirit penetration, and they can reach really high amounts for these values, so they can actually ignore somebody like Dario's survivability. With that said, today we'll take a look at his EX upgrades, his new stats, his new abilities, and just whether he's competitive or not and worth the blossoms for you. The first thing Dario gets from his EX job is a new role. Instead of just being a tank, he's now a tank and a debuffer, and that's really good because now that we have people like King Mund in the meta that do both tanking and provide some utility, any tank that only has tanking in their capabilities are basically just kicked out of the meta. They are not worth using. So he does have some extra utility. He has mid-tier bulk. He won't be as bulky as the best option, but he can still do a decent job. And then one of his EX abilities is in his sub-job for Spellblade. So he's kind of locked into being a Spellblade forever, which is something I really dislike. He is a low mobility unit with 3 and 1, but has the ninja sub-job, so just like King Mont, he can potentially run 4 and 2 if you run that passive on him. And then, if you don't have Dario to 99, you definitely should aim to at least get him there, because his TMR is insane. It's a sword that increases acquired AP up by 30% for the user, and that's really important for paladins because it allows them to use Taunting Blade on their second turn instead of their third, so it's something you should aim to build at some point. For the EX job though, I'm not that sure. So, since Dario is more of a magic tank, we'll compare him to other magic tanks. He can do physical tanking fairly well though, because he has many ways to increase his defense, so don't think he's really just locked to magical tanking. If we compare him to Freyavia and Rain, naturally, Dario has a lot less HP, right? He has 4200 compared to upwards of 5100, so it's a big loss there. And he also has a major agility disadvantage, which is 49 compared to 60 for Freyavia or 57 for Rain. For the other stats, it's not that bad. His magic is also lower, but it's not dumpster tier. He also has a little bit less luck than Freyavia, but more than Rain, so he's going to be decently accurate. And then his resistances aren't bad. He's got slash and missile resistance in the positives, and can also get a decent magic resistance with his other passives. Overall though, he will not be as tanky as those two other options, that is for sure. Can he make up for that with other things? Perhaps, but being slower, having less HP, and worse resistances is a pretty tough mix to overcome. Then if we're looking at how his stats move from 99 to 120, I think he's one of those EX jobs that can actually stop at 115 and do a good job. His 120 ability is interesting but not mandatory for him, so if you only have 3 blossoms and you're in need of a tank, you could invest them into him and have somebody that works fairly well. He's still gonna have a lot of HP and tank for a long time. So looking at his ability upgrades, the first one is in his main job. It's Aeroga Blade, who now has the ability to dispel all buffs and haste. So it's not a bad thing, right? You're going to remove attack up, slash attack up, whatever kind of buff the enemy has, and also haste, but it's super short range, so don't expect that to happen before the enemy hits you with their buffs at least once or twice, and then probably has already taken an extra turn thanks to their haste. So yes, it's good, but the timing might be a little bit off. And then his Taunting Blade, Taunting Spell, is improved to now deal decent damage. Instead of 121 mod, it's going to be 165, and it will also have a chance of immobilizing. That is overall a really solid upgrade. The main drawback of that is that it's in his sub-job, so now you can't really run Dario as a Paladin or Ninja sub. I'm not saying these sub-jobs are good, but I like having options to switch around my characters, and he's just not viable if he's not a Spellblade anymore, so that's how it is. Then his new ability, Drain Seal, is interesting. It reduces counter chance by 100, so it completely nullifies a character's chance to counter you. Charlotte has the same mechanics, so Dario is our second unit that can do that. It is a fairly long range attack, and also absorbs HP as a magic type attack, so it's his first magic type attack as well. Overall, I like this, but I don't know how often the AI is going to use that, because it only has 86% damage mod, so it's going to be weaker than Taunting Spell in basically every scenario, which means I'm expecting the AI to never use that. Also, Spellblade has really low starting AP, so you're probably not going to have the time to use like Tonic Spell into this. You'll eventually run out of AP before you use a lot of moves. So yes, it's good, but unless you're playing Dario manually, you probably won't even use the ability because he's just going to use Tonic Spell instead. So here's a sample build of how he could be run, and I try to build something that could work both against physical and magical attacks, because nowadays we see a lot of hybrid teams. If you're just specialized against mages, you won't do well against many of the meta teams, so you need some little bit of both. With this, our Dario has 7000 HP, 52 defense, and 34 spirit. He only has 15 magic resistance, but you could change the Espers to give him a little bit more if you wanted to, or just have an ally run the Fenrir Vision card, and then you suddenly have 35. And don't forget, as a Spellblade, he can increase that by another 38, so he could actually have upwards of 70% magic resistance with this build. And then he would tank magic fairly well as well, right? He has a magic barrier, that resistance, and a decent amount of spirit, but still has upwards of 50 defense and 30 slash resistance on the side for those pesky Dwaynes and other attackers. So yeah, I could see him survive for a long time in a fight. He is fairly slow though at 72 agility and has a move of 3 and jump 1. In this build, he has Shadowrunner. You could replace Shadowrunner with Shikuchi if you wanted more movement instead of extra agility. So partners for him, it would be somebody like 9S who can increase his defense and spirit further, would do a really good job, and then he's a naturally good partner for wind units because he can start a chain for them or something like that, but as a tank you don't need synergy with the rest of your team as much as some other roles, so don't lock yourself into thinking I don't have a right partner for him. He's just a decent budget tank overall, no matter with who you're pairing him with. In terms of people to avoid though, there are a lot of choices. You don't want to fight an ice team, especially if it has Gilgamesh, because he's going to reduce your slash resistance into the negatives and then two-shot you, or Hourne's going to come in and finish you off afterwards, so you have to be very careful. Also, I don't know how well he can survive an enemy Black Witch Helena. With a Cypress Spell, she can ignore a large portion of your magic resistance, while also reducing our spirit back to 4, and breaking the magic barrier if there's any, so he's not going to be able to tank her for a long time. So while he's a decent tank, he's definitely not top tier in that regards. So overall, I mean, he's probably a very interesting unit for PvE. I love having a slower tank once in a while for PvE because it means like turn-based barriers are gonna last longer. He can use Sentinel and just stay there for a very long time without taking a turn, thus being immune to enemy damage. So there's a couple uses for this guy. He's also a decent option for CM, I think, because of his cost of 60. So if you want a tank or something like that, but are on a budget and want to run him alongside cost 100 units or other very powerful characters, he could be a budget option, and he will be decent. Now, if I had a choice between him and Nasha, would I prefer Nasha? I think so still. Nasha is a lot tankier than he is, so if we're talking MR tanks, Nasha is gonna tank for longer, but have no utility outside of her tanking, while Dario has some okay utility, which is really fun, but he's a little bit more squishy overall. My overall verdict though, he is fairly mediocre. He has a couple nice things, but he has nothing compared to units that like Kingmon, like Warrior of Light, and I know I'm comparing him to UR units, but that's just what it is, right? If you have the choice between running Dario or somebody else, unless you're playing it for fun, you will not pick him. So is it worth the investment? Well, if your account is in a place where you can afford to make investments just for fun to run units you like, then go ahead. If you have a newer account and you're trying to invest into things that will actually help you clear more content, then Dario's not the guy for you. He is still Venera's favorite, hopefully. So, with all that said, guys, thank you so much for watching. Do you have any plans to build him? If so, I definitely want to see him in action. I am going to skip him. I am very scarce on Blossoms, so I can't really choose to invest in units just for fun, but I really want to see some gameplay of him and see whether I'm undervaluing him a little bit or not. But that was it from me. If you've enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and then as always, thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.